cursed trailhead where the forest steals your face. Perfect for fans of ASMR, horror stories, and sleeping stories that turn into nightmares. You're listening to ASMR 404 Found. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. They say Stillwater Gorge was closed off after a series of disappearances back in the 90s. But I don't think it was ever truly abandoned. Not really. You see, when something terrible happens in a place, the earth doesn't just forget. It holds. It breeds it. And if you go walking through those cursed woods long enough, it'll reach up from the soil and pull you under. I didn't believe that until last summer. My name is Jacob. I'm a 33-year-old photographer. Mostly wilderness stuff, foggy rivers, forgotten mines, twisted oaks at twilight. The more eerie, the better. It's how I made my name online. Niche horror nature, you could say. One of my followers tipped me off about Stillwater Gorge, sent me an email with a grainy photo and one sentence. You want cursed? Go here. Stillwater was in upstate New York, deep in the Adirondacks, about 5 miles from the nearest town called Ashfield. Officially, the gorge was off-limits due to a landslide hazard, but no one in town seemed to remember any slide. I asked around at the local diner, acting like a clueless tourist. One old guy in a Carhartt jacket just muttered, "They still down there, boy," and refused to make eye contact. I should have left then. Instead, I hiked out the next morning. Just me, my Canon, a drone, 2 battery packs, freeze-dried meals, and an old topographic map I downloaded from a pre-2000 trail database. The trees out there grow thick pine and birch, choking out sunlight like a curtain. By the time I reached the gorge, the air was damp with rot and moss. No cell signal, just the sound of wind twisting through dead branches. The trailhead was marked by a faded wooden sign, half swallowed by the underbrush. Someone had spray-painted over the name in black. All that was left was the word water and a red handprint underneath. It looked fresh. I stepped over the threshold. Something changed the second my boots hit the path. The woods went quieter. Not silent exactly, but wrong. No birdsong, no bugs. Just the soft crunch of my footsteps, and something like breathing slow, steady, distant beneath it all. I chalked it up to wind tunneling through the gorge. My rational brain was still clinging to science back then. The trail narrowed fast, winding between ancient stones, slick with green slime. My drone couldn't fly, here too dense. I kept moving, camera at the ready. I snapped shots of decayed cabins, rusted logging equipment, and a pair of boots nailed to a tree like some kind of warning. Around mile 3, I found the first tent. It was shredded, the fabric hanging in long strips, like something had slashed it open from the inside. Sleeping bags were still inside, soaked through. I found a Polaroid camera with a single photo left inside it, warped by moisture but still visible. It showed 3 people sitting around a fire, 2 men and a woman. Their faces had been scratched out. I kept the photo. I told myself I wasn't. Be scared, but I was. Still, I pushed on. By dusk, I made camp near a narrow bend in the trail where a dried-up creek cut through black stone. My GPS had been blinking error for 2 hours. The compass spun in slow circles. That night, the breathing got louder. I couldn't sleep. I laid there in my tent, watching the mesh ceiling glow faintly from moonlight. And I swear I heard movement all around me. Not animals, not deer or foxes. These footsteps were too soft, too slow, like someone walking barefoot just beyond the edge of my light dot. At one point, I sat up and whispered out, "Hello." The breathing stopped. Then came a voice, a man's voice, whispering the same phrase over and over, just beyond the trees. They walk hollow, they walk hollow, they walk hollow. It wasn't chanting. It wasn't a warning. It sounded like someone lost, stuck in a loop. I stayed in my tent, gripping my knife until morning. I should have gone back. Instead, I packed up and kept going. About a half-mile past the creek, the trail dropped steep into the gorge itself. You had to descend using a rusted chain bolted into the rock. I hesitated at the edge. Below was darkness so thick it felt alive. My flashlight barely cut into it. I went down. At the bottom was an old ranger station, or what was left of it, half buried. Pinned dirt and pine needles, the wood warped by decades of rot. Inside were bunk beds with moldy mattresses, a toppled filing cabinet, and hundreds of claw marks on the wall's deep grooves, like someone had tried to escape but couldn't. I opened one of the drawers. There were reports, real ones, water-stained and typewritten. I sat on the floor and read them under flashlight. Disappearances. Not just 1 or 2. Dozens. Campers, rangers, geologists, all vanishing without a trace inside the gorge. No signs of struggle, no remains, just gone. Each file ended with the same stamped phrase, "No further action. RECOMAI. No me own." That's when I heard the voices again. Dozens of them this time, male and females, whispering from every angle. They walk hollow, they walk hollow. I turned off my light. That was a mistake. In the dark, I could hear them getting closer. Footsteps crunching slowly across old wood. Breathing filling every inch of space. One exhale was so close, I felt it against my face. Then I saw them. Figures. Pale, gaunt, eyeless. Dozens of them, crawling from holes in the floor and ceiling, emerging from shadow. Mouths hanging open in silent screams. Their skin looked stretched too thin, pulled taut like wax over bone. I ran. I left my pack, my gear, even my camera. I just ran up the chain, through the creek, past the torn tent and the red handprint. I ran until I collapsed near the highway, blood on my hands from clawing at thorns. I woke up in a hospital 2 days later. They said I was found wandering near Ashfield, dehydrated and delirious. They called it exposure psychosis, said I imagined it all. But when I checked my jacket pocket, the Polaroid was still there, the one with the scratched-out faces. Except now there was a 4th person in it, me. After the hospital, I didn't go back to New York. I left everything behind. My gear, my photos, even my apartment lease. Moved in with my sister in Maryland for a while. She thought I'd had a breakdown. I let her believe it. It was easier than explaining the truth. But the truth has a way of clawing its way back. About 2 weeks after Stillwater, things started showing up at the house. It started small. Footprints outside the back door. Bare human prints in the frost. My sister blamed kids. I knew better. Then the whispers came. Late at night, just past midnight, I'd hear them in the hallway. That same phrase repeating in low, cracked voices. They walk hollow. My sister never heard it. Neither did her husband. I'd lay there in the guest bed, eyes wide open, and listen to the soft creak of the floorboards. Something pacing, something breathing. I tried to destroy the photo. I burned it in the fireplace one night after they went to sleep. Watched it curl into ash. But the next morning, it was back lying face down on my pillow. When I turned it over, all 4 faces were scratched out now, even mine. The shadows followed me everywhere. Reflections lingered too long. Mirrors showed figures, standing just out of frame. At one point, I stopped sleeping altogether. My body would drift off, but I'd keep waking up, gasping, arms pinned to my side, something pressing on my chest like a weight made of ice. I knew what I had to do. I had to go back. You can't outrun the hollow men. Once they see you, once they know your shape, they don't let go. And it's not about killing you. It's worse. They wear you, piece by piece, until there's nothing left of you inside your skin but wind. I researched Stillwater Gorge for weeks. Found archived documents buried in state forest logs and police reports that had been quietly deleted. Most of it didn't make sense, but one detail kept coming up. A name, Orrin. Fielding. He was the last ranger assigned to Stillwater before it was shut down in 1992. Filed the final report about the disappearances, then vanished himself. No obituary, no body, just a note scribbled into the margin of his logbook that said, "The gorge doesn't take you all at once. It empties you slowly. Hollow is not death. Hollow is forever." That sentence burned itself into my mind. I packed what I needed. This time, I took nothing digital. No camera, no drone. Just analog maps, a compass, a steel hatchet, a hunting knife, and a notebook. If I was going back, it wasn't to document. It was to end it, or let it end. Me. Stillwater hadn't changed. The town still looked like it had been carved out of 1976 and forgotten. The same waitress at the diner. The same old man outside in his Carhartt jacket. But this time, when I passed him, he looked up. "You brought it with you," he said. I stopped. "What? You didn't leave it behind. That's why they're louder now." "How do you know about?" But he turned away and walked inside the barber shop, locking the door behind him. That night, I camped on the outskirts of the trailhead. I didn't go in yet, just sat by the fire, sharpening the blade of my hatchet. Brew. and listening to the breathing beyond the tree line. They knew I was back at midnight. The woods went silent again. Not quiet, empty. The kind of emptiness you feel in dreams when you realize something's watching you. And from the firelight, I could see them standing at the edge of the trees, pale figures, still as statues. Hollow men. None of them moved. They didn't need to. They just stood there, watching, reminding me what waited below. I entered the gorge at dawn. The red handprint was still there, smeared like it had never dried. The woods pressed in tighter than I remembered. Each step felt slower, like time didn't work the same inside the trail. Birds circled overhead but never entered. I saw deer tracks near the top, but they ended halfway down the hill. Nothing went into Stillwater, not willingly. At mile 3, the tent was gone. In its place was a single shoe, toe pointed toward. The gorge, a woman's boot, caked with dried blood, the same kind I'd seen in the Polaroid that I kept going. The creek was dry again, but this time I saw something that made me stop cold. A message carved into the stones along the bank, hidden unless the light hit just right. If you hear your name, don't answer. If you see yourself, don't follow. I took out my notebook and copied it down. The air grew colder as I descended, but the chain into the gorge. My breath came out in puffs. Time felt wrong. I checked my watch every few minutes, but it was frozen at 8:17. I hadn't brought a phone. I didn't trust electricity anymore. Not in a place like this. The ranger station looked worse, half collapsed, roof fallen in. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. I knew what was in there. I kept walking deeper into the hollow dot, and then I saw him, a man, hunched over by a twisted tree, wearing a ranger's uniform soaked in mud and blood. His back was to me. I stepped closer, heart pounding, blade ready, fielding. I said quietly. He turned. His face was wrong, stretched, eyeless, but it smiled when it heard the name. A wide grin split open his waxy skin. He spoke with a voice not his own, a voice that echoed mine. "We remember you, Jacob." I stepped back. "You don't belong here." "Not yet," it said. Then it lunged. I swung the hatchet. It connected. The thing didn't bleed, but it howled a long, gurgling cry like air escaping from a deep well. I ran again, but this time I didn't run back. I ran forward, toward the heart of the gorge. The trees grew stranger, bent backward, bark split open with mouths, silent and open. I followed the path down into a stone ravine, where the trail vanished entirely. A circle of standing stones jutted from the ground like broken teeth. In the center was a pit. I felt it before I saw it. The hollow, a soundless pull, like gravity reversed. I stood at the edge, and every bone in my body told me to jump, but I fought it. I took out the Polaroid one last time. It was blank now. No faces, no fire, just white. I dropped it into the pit. The air shivered. They came then, all of them, the hollow men. crawling from the trees, the rocks, the dark. Their mouths moved without sound, reaching for me, pulling at my skin, my voice, my memories. I screamed, and the gorge screamed with me. I don't know how long I was inside that scream. The air thickened around me like tar, pressing into my ears, my mouth, my lungs. It didn't feel like sound anymore. It felt like a memory being torn from my bones. Like grief, the hollow men didn't attack, not the way you'd expect. They surrounded me, circling like dancers, mouths moving in perfect silence. Every motion was slow, almost reverent. Like they weren't just trying to consume me. They were trying to understand me, strip me, one layer at a time. One stepped closer. It looked like me, not in a vague way, not in some haunting, dreamlike distortion. No, it was my face, my body, my stance, my scars. It was me, but empty. The eyes weren't there, just skin stretched over sockets. The mouth moved soundlessly and then whispered something I felt instead. Be heard. You left your voice here. Then it opened its arms. For a moment, I almost stepped forward. It felt like gravity, like peace, a place to sleep. But then I remembered what the stone had warned me. If you see yourself, don't follow. I clenched the handle of the hatchet and swung it with every ounce of myself. It split the thing's head open down the middle. No blood, just a long sigh as it collapsed inward like smoke folding in on itself. The others paused, then shrieked not in anger, but sorrow, as if I had broken something ancient. That's when the ground began to split. The center of the stone ring cracked open, not like an earthquake, but like something below was pushing up. A thin arm, pale and jointless, reached through the crack. Then another. They grasped the edges of the pit and began to pull. Something was climbing out. I ran, not back, not forward, just away. But the woods kept shifting. The path folded in on itself. I ran through the same clearing 3 times, past the same boot nailed to the same tree. I carved an X into the bark and saw another X already carved underneath it. Time wasn't working right. I dropped to my knees and screamed into the ground. Screamed until my throat burned. I beat my fists against the soil. And then, for some reason, I whispered something I hadn't said in years. Please, I don't want to forget who I am. The wind stopped. The trees stilled. And I heard a voice. It was not a whisper, not a hollow moan. It was clear, kind. It came from behind me. You don't have to. I turned. There was a woman standing in the trees, dressed in ranger green, long dark braid down her back. Her eyes were soft, familiar, not hollow. Your Fielding's daughter, I said before I even knew how I knew. She nodded. My father tried to stop it. He failed, but he left a path out. She held out her hand. I took it. Suddenly, we were running not through the woods, but through memories. I saw flashes of myself as a kid, hiking in Shenandoah. The first time I held a camera. The face of the woman I almost married. All these pieces I had forgotten, buried under fear. Her voice anchored me as the world twisted. They can only take what you give them. That's their rule. You looked too long, you listened, but you never gave. The gorge shrieked again. This time it was angry. The air darkened. The trees groaned, bent toward us. But the woman kept running, pulling me through a gap in the trees I hadn't seen before. It led up, back toward the creek, back toward the world. I looked behind me. The hollow men stood at the edge of the gorge, dozens of them, watching, silent, still. One raised a hand, slowly. A wave, or maybe a warning. We crossed the red handprint. Then everything went black. I woke up in a ranger outpost, 2 towns over, mud-caked, half-frozen, clutching my notebook in one hand and the Polaroid in the other. But something had changed. The photo was blank again. This time, forever. I never found the woman again. No records of Fielding having a daughter. No reports of any survivors from Stillwater Gorge. When I asked local authorities about the place, they looked at me like I'd spoken a curse. Stillwater doesn't appear on modern maps anymore. But sometimes, late at night, I check forums. Lost hikers, strange disappearances, GPS anomalies. And every so often, someone posts a blurry photo, always near some forgotten trailhead, always with the same caption. Who are they? The hollow men don't live in Stillwater alone. They're everywhere now, spreading, wearing the faces of those they've stolen, walking through the woods in silence. And if you ever hear your name whispered in the trees, don't answer, because they're listening and they remember you. They told us not to go near Devil's Hollow after sunset. The locals didn't explain why. They never do. They just tilt their heads a little, squint through their teeth, and say it soft. That place ain't right. And that should have been enough. But we were arrogant. My name's Troy. I'm 29, ex-Marine, and part-time wilderness search and rescue in Montana. That summer, I was stationed in Gallatin County, working backcountry calls, mostly lost hikers and cold cases turned up by hunters. I'd seen weird things before. Broken compass spins, missing time, unexplained screams in the trees. But Devil's Hollow was different. It wasn't marked on most maps. If you looked on Google Earth, it was just a patch of thick forest. No roads in, no trails out. But on the older topo maps used by the Forest Service, there was a faint line like a scar cutting through the western side of the Bridger Range, ending in a place called Devil's Hollow Ridge. It was just a name. That's what I kept telling myself. When the call came in, it was already past midnight. A group of amateur survivalists hadn't returned from their 4-day trek. They were experienced but new to Montana terrain. Their GPS stopped transmitting around mile 15. They had entered Devil's Hollow the day before and hadn't been heard from since. I volunteered. People don't like being assigned to that zone. A lot of them believe the stories. I didn't. Not then. I packed light, rifle, knife, fire starter, satellite radio, extra batteries, I left my phone. No point in bringing it where there's no signal. By 5 in the morning, I was already hiking. Up from the southern edge, mist was thick. Trees here grow wrong, leaning inward, bending toward the trail like they're listening. I'd read about tree creep, but these weren't shaped by wind. They were shaped by silence. About 2 hours in, I found the first marker, a makeshift campsite torn open. The fire pit was still warm. One backpack was half sipped with claw marks along the nylon. I scanned the area. No blood, no signs of a struggle, just vanished, like they had stood up mid-meal and walked off into the dark. I followed a set of tracks heading deeper. They weren't wearing hiking boots, just socks. That didn't make sense. The deeper I got, the quieter it became. No birds, no insects, no wind, just my breathing and the crunch of pine needles under my boots. Then I heard it, low, hollow, like metal dragging across stone from far away. I stopped and listened. It came again, this time closer. I raised my rifle and swept the tree line. Nothing. I kept moving. About a mile further, I found the second site. A tent half buried in moss. Like it had been there for months, not days. But the rainfly was still wet. Inside, there was a journal. Pages damp. The last entry read, "We heard something last night. Looked like a light, but it wasn't fire. It moved too slow. It hovered. I felt my stomach not dot. I kept walking. Eventually, I came to the ridge. The trail dropped sharply, bordered by jagged rock and twisted branches. Beyond that was Devil's Hollow itself, and it lived up to its name. The hollow wasn't a valley. It was a wound, a gash in the earth, deeper than it had any right to be. Fog hung low like it was breathing. You could feel the temperature shift the moment you crossed the tree line. Colder, wetter, wrong. I camped that night on the ridge, started a small fire and kept my rifle loaded. Every few minutes, I'd hear movement in the woods, but nothing ever showed itself until I saw the light. It was a soft blue glow, not like a flashlight, no beam, just a pulse, like it was alive. It floated through the trees in absolute silence. I grabbed my binoculars and zoomed in. What I saw was a man, but not a man. He was tall, too tall, skin gray and stretched, eyes black, but the mouth took up half his face, hanging open, not moving, just staring at me across the ridge with that blue light glowing from inside his throat. He didn't blink. I backed away slowly. The light blinked out. When I looked again, he was gone. I didn't sleep. By morning, my compass spun circles. My watch had stopped. I decided to push down into the hollow. I had to find the hikers. Had to know if what I saw was real. The hollow is not made for people. That's the first thing I realized. Trees grow so close, you have to turn sideways. Roots not above ground like veins. And everything smells like rotting teeth. That's when I started hearing them, voices, calling my name. At first I thought it was the lost hikers. I shouted back, no response. Then the voices repeated exactly the same way, same inflection. Same words. Troy, over here. Please, help. But it was wrong. Like a recording. Too smooth. Too perfect. I ran not away. Toward it. Because that's what Devil's Hollow does. It doesn't want you gone. It wants you inside. I stumbled into a clearing and saw something that should not exist. A cabin. Small, black wood. No windows. Just a door with something carved. Dim to it. Dead light stays. I felt my legs go numb. The door creaked open, and inside, sitting at a wooden table, were all four hikers, perfectly still, pale. Their eyes were wide open, glowing faintly blue. None of them moved. Then one of them smiled. The girl who smiled at me, her face didn't change beyond that grin. It was wide, rigid, stuck on her like a mask. Her pupils weren't pupils at all. They were tiny pinpoints of that soft blue glow I had seen in the woods. I didn't speak, couldn't. I lowered my rifle, slowly, backing up until my shoulders hit the edge of the doorframe. That's when the boy closest to the fire twitched. He turned his head toward me in a way that didn't look natural. The movement was too smooth, like a puppet on a string. And then the others followed, one by one, heads snapping toward me. Their smiles stretching wider. One of them, the tallest, opened his mouth. A low hum came out. Not words, not breathing. A tone taut constant, high, harmonic. My vision pulsed with it. I dropped the rifle. I don't remember running. Only the moment I realized I was outside again, on my knees, gasping, blood leaking from my ears. I didn't go back to the cabin. I wandered for hours, maybe longer. I tried to call for help, but my radio was fried. Static, even on emergency channels. My compass still spun, and my backup battery was dead even though I hadn't used it. It was then I noticed something worse. The sun wasn't moving. I checked the sky over and over, but the light never changed. It stayed in a permanent state of overcast, morning flat, gray, muted. I checked my watch again. Still frozen. The hollow didn't just cut me off. It swallowed time. By the time I reached the ridge again, I realized the trail was gone. Not overgrown. Not lost. Gone. The trees had shifted. Branches had moved. Roots had erupted across the dirt. Like the forest itself had rearranged while I was below. I tried to retrace my steps, but everything was mirrored. No footprints, no familiar markings, no sounds, except the humming. It followed me everywhere now. At first, it was low and behind the trees. Then it was under my feet. Then it was inside my head. That night, I built no fire. I didn't eat. I sat with my back to a rock and watched the fog crawl between the trees. I remember blinking once, and when I opened my eyes again, he was there, the tall man, the same one with the stretched skin and the blue light glowing from his throat. He stood at the edge of the clearing, motionless dot. Then he opened his mouth, not to speak, to shine. The light poured out like liquids low and humming in when it hit the trees. The bark began to melt, not burn. Melt faces appeared in the trunks, screaming, dozens of them. Men, women, children, all glowing blue, all mouthing one word: stay. I stood up and ran without directions. The forest warped as I moved. Trees looped back in impossible ways. I crossed a small stream I had seen hours before. Only now the water flowed up the rocks, like gravity had reversed. Then I saw the people, naked, mud-covered, hunched low to the ground like animals. They were chewing something in their hands. I crept closer, silently, crawling on my stomach through the brush. What they were eating wasn't food. It was paper. Pages from the hiker's journal. Photographs. Maps. One of them shoved an entire compass into his mouth and bit down until blood poured from his gums. He chewed and swallowed without blinking. They looked human, but their eyes pulsed with that same cold blue glow. I turned and ran again. I don't know how long I moved. Time bled into itself, but eventually I hit something hard metal. A radio. Tower.rust-covered. Half collapsed. Overgrown, but real. I climbed. Each rung creaked under my weight. But I didn't stop until I was high above the treetops. The hollow stretched in every direction. No trails, no roads. Just black forest fading into fog. But up there, I saw something new. A second light, faint, red, flickering dot. It was coming from the northeast quadrant of the woods, deep inside a canyon-shaped bend in the tree line. I didn't know if it was real or if Devil's Hollow was playing with my head again. But I needed to try. I marked the direction and climbed back down. When I reached the ground, I realized I wasn't alone. A man was standing at the base of the tower, not tall, not glowing, normal. He wore an old Forest Service jacket, beard, scar across his cheek. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me with exhausted eyes. Then he spoke. "You shouldn't be here." I could barely form words. "Are you real?" He nodded once. "Name's Levi. Been stuck here a long time." I asked how long. He said he couldn't remember. Said this place doesn't let you count the days. Just makes you forget what you came in for. Makes you soft, hollow. I asked him about the red light. He looked toward it. "That's the exit." I didn't believe him. "Then why are you still here?" He looked down at his hands. "Because I'm not done yet." That didn't make sense. He told me he came in back in 2004. His sister had gone missing on a college trip. They found her pack outside Devil's Hollow. He came looking, said he found her, but it wasn't her anymore. Just something wearing her skin. He killed it, and then the forest stopped letting him leave. Levi said the only way out was through the red light. But you had to go alone. The forest didn't allow company. If more than one person tried to leave, the forest swallowed both. He looked at me, eyes hollowed with guilt. I've led 3 people to it before. All of them disappeared the moment I tried to follow. I asked why he hadn't tried again alone. He said he had, many times, but it was never there. When he was alone, only when someone else found it too. Devil's Hollow knew it punished him with hope. He told me he could guide me to it, but once I saw it, I'd have to run without him. No looking back, no helping if he screamed, no stopping if I heard my name. I agreed. We walked for what felt like days. No sleep, no breaks, just fog and branches and static in our ears. The forest groaned the closer we got, like it knew we were trying to leave. And when we reached the mouth of the canyon, I saw it. The red light, a doorway carved into stone, not made by man. Something older, something deep. It glowed like a heartbeat. I looked at Levi. He just nodded. Go. So I ran. I heard him scream behind me. Then I heard my name, soft, pleading, familiar. But I didn't stop, even when it sounded like my mother, even when it sounded like my own voice. I ran until the red light swallowed me whole. The red light didn't burn. It didn't blind. It wasn't even hot. It felt like slipping into water that wasn't wet, like standing inside a heartbeat. I didn't walk through it. I fell, no sense of gravity, no sky, no floor, just color and cold. Then I hit the ground hard. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on black dirt under an overpass. Cars thundered above. My limbs shook as I sat up. My gear was gone. My rifle, my jacket, even my boots. I was barefoot, mud-caked, covered in pine needles. It was raining. I stumbled toward the road and flagged down a semi. The driver slammed on the brakes and stared at me like I was a ghost. He asked where the hell I came from. I told Tim Devil's Hollow. His face changed. He didn't ask anything else. He called it in. I was taken to the ER and then questioned by Forest Service officials. I told them bits and pieces, left out the impossible things, claimed the hikers had died in a storm, said I lost my radio and wandered out. They bought most of it. One of the hikers' bodies was later found hanging from a tree 10 miles south. The other 3 were never recovered. They ruled it an accident, misadventure. Montana wilderness is cruel. They didn't mention the journal, by, or the blue light, but someone must have read it, because 2 weeks later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photograph, black and white, grainy. It showed the same ridge I had camped on, only this time 5 people stood. At the edge, one of them was me. The back of the photo had a single word written in red ink. Stay. After that, things started to change. I'd see the light sometimes, not in the woods, in reflections, in the glass of my rearview mirror, in the puddle by my porch, a soft, flickering red that disappeared. If I blinked, the humming came back. At first only when I slept, then during the day, then during conversations. It never got louder, just closer. I began to forget things, appointments, names, directions, my own address. I visited Levi's old house, found it through Forest Service records. His name had been wiped from the active logs, but there was a file under missing personnel, special case. Nobody ever recovered. I met his brother. He didn't ask questions, just offered me tea and sat in silence for an hour before speaking. "You saw the doorway, didn't you?" I nodded. He said, "The red light doesn't lead out. It leads forward. The only way out is through the middle." He said something else I'll never forget. Devil's Hollow was never a place. It's a mouth. What lives in there doesn't eat people. It empties them. And once you've heard your own voice echo inside it, you're never truly out. I left and never went back. That was 3 months ago. Last week, I saw a hiker on the trail just outside Yellowstone. She was crouched down by the river, face turned away. Her body was shaking like she was sobbing. I went to help. When I got close, enough to touch her shoulder, she turned, and she had my face, mouth wide open, blue glow pouring out, eyes hollow. She didn't move, didn't speak, just smiled. I ran again, but I know that didn't fix anything, because every night since, I wake up at exactly 3:17 a.m., and standing at the foot of my bed is the tall man, never moving, never speaking, just waiting. And the longer I look at him, the more I realize something even worse than the glowing mouth or stretched skin. He's not a stranger anymore. He looks just like me.